Hello everyone. Welcome to this video on how to create a budget versus actual spending dashboard in Bold BI. This kind of dashboard tracks financial performance in real time, highlights budget variances, and reveals spending trends. It helps set and monitor financial goals. First, I create a new dashboard and name it. Next, I create a data source using PostgreSQL and enter the required connection details: the name, server name, port, username, password, and database name. I click Connect, which opens the Query Designer and enables the code option since I already have the query. I enter the query and click Run to see the values retrieved from the database. I click Save to store the data in the data source. Now let's create the dashboard. First, I add a combined widget for income and adjust its size. I add another combined widget for expenses. Next, I add a text widget. I click the edit icon. I type income and click the tick icon. I disable the show shadow and container appearance. I add another text widget for expenses. Next, I add a KPI card to show the actual income and customize its properties. I name it Actual Income. I add the expressions for month, year, actual income, and current month's actual income. I drag and drop the current month's actual income into the actual value and change the format to currency. I add the expression for the previous month's actual income. Add it in the target value. I add a description. I disable the auto font size. I click Enable Animation in the animation settings. I change the font size to 40 in the KPI value. I want to disable the auto font sizes in this. I change the value font size to 22 in the left value. Change the name to current month. Change the caption font size to 12 in the left value. I disable the auto font size. In this one, I change the value font size to 22. Change the name to previous month. Change the caption font size to 12 in the right value. I disable the option to show shadow under container appearance. Next, I add another KPI card for actual expenses. I add the expression for actual expenses and the current month's actual expenses. I drag and drop the current month's actual expenses into the actual value and change the format to currency. I add the expression for the previous month's actual expenses. Add it in the target value and customize its properties. Next, I add a radial gauge to show the income as a percent of the budget and customize its properties. I name the gauge Income Percent of Budget. I add the expression for the budget income and the income percentage. I add the income percentage in the actual value. I format the representation to ones, decimal places to 0. Add the percent symbol to the right. I add the description. Change the types to full circle. I change the maximum value to 100 in the basic settings. I change the range pointer color in the pointer settings. Next, I change the scale width to 30 in the scale settings. I disable the auto font size and change it for the actual value to 40. I change the title's font size, change the corner radius to 0, and disable the option to show a shadow in the container appearance. I enable the Show Header option in the container actions. Next, I add another radial gauge to show the expenses as a percent of the budget. I name the gauge Expense Percent of Budget. I add the expression for the budget and expenses percentage. I add expense percentage in the actual value. I format the representation to ones, decimal places to 0. Add the percent symbol to the right. I customize its properties. Next, I add a grid widget in the Income Combine widget. I add the budget income, rename it, and format it in currency. I add the actual income. Then, I add the expression for the income difference. I add the income difference in the columns section. I disable Show Border and enable Allow Cell Selection in the basic settings. I change the color of the foreground and background and change the row height to 15 in the header settings. I then change the row height to 22 in the content settings. I set the column alignment to the center in the column settings. Next, I add a grid widget in the Expense Combine widget. I add the budget expenses. Rename it and format it as currency. I add the actual expenses. Then, I add the expression for the expense difference. I add the expense difference in the columns section. And customize its properties. Next, I add a combo chart to show the actual versus budgeted income by month. And I customize its properties. I name it Actual versus Budget Income by Month. Add the actual income in the Values section. And format it as currency. I add the budget income in the secondary value. I add date in the column section and set the date format to month year. I click Enable Animation and disable the interactivity in the basic settings. I turn off the axis title and format the primary axis and secondary axis as currency. I disable the option to show shadow under container appearance. I enable the Show Header option in the container actions. I add another combo chart to show the actual versus budget expenses by month. And I customize its properties. Lastly, I add a grid widget. I add a category, budget, actual, income difference. Add the expression for average percentage income of budget. And I add it to the column section. And enable cell selection in the basic settings. I change the color of the foreground and background. And change the row height to 20 in the header settings. I change the row height to 15 in the content settings. Then, I set the column alignment to center in the column settings. I customize the average income percentage on budget to the bar type in the formatting section. I disable the option to show shadows in a container appearance. I add another grid widget for expenses. Now, everything is ready to preview the dashboard. I click Preview. See, the dashboard is rendered in preview mode. Once the dashboard is created, you can publish it by clicking the Publish button. In this video, you have learned how to create a budget versus actual spending dashboard in Bold BI. To know more about Bold BI, you can visit boldbi.com. To try Bold BI, you can start a 30-day free trial by clicking the Try It Free option. If you want a demo from an expert, you can schedule a call by clicking the Request Demo button. If you found this video useful, please click the like button, subscribe to our channel to watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.